I'm Hannah.
And I'm Charlotte.
And welcome to the Purple Sector.
So today we have a very special guest, and it's the current Director of Digital Strategy of Motorsport Network and former head of WTF1. So please, a big fat welcome to Jess McFadyen.
Hi girls. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy that you've come on. So first of all, we just want to thank you, and we just want to know how you've been finding lockdown.
Yeah, I think it's been weird for everybody, but it's been particularly weird for me because I started my new job and then everything shut down. So half the people I'm working with I've not met, so I only know them through video calls. So I'm half convinced they're just holograms until I get to actually meet them in real life. So that's been kind of a personal challenge, but I think it's also been really interesting. It's given people like new perspectives on things, and we've had to be really creative, and there's been way more people creating content, which I just think's fab, because the more voices we can get out there, and I know you girls started doing what you're doing as well, so in that instance as well, it's been really, really cool to see. So I count myself lucky, definitely.
That's great. It kind of segues into my question is basically, how are you finding your new role and how different are you finding it compared to stuff you've done before?
Yeah, I guess it's totally different from what I was doing at WTF1. Obviously, WTF1 was or is much smaller and kind of indie. I mean, it's massive, and like I've loved watching what the guys have achieved since I moved away from that side of things. But it was very much there was pretty much just the four of us working on building the brand, and now I've got a team of four just in my little area. So it's definitely different. But it's super cool working for brands like Autosport and Motorsport.com. I think that was always, especially on the Autosport side, was always a dream of mine, because I'd been a salesperson on Autosport back in 2015, so I kind of did a bit of like a return home, but in a different role. So I was chuffed to be back, and it's had challenges for sure. And having like the season play out as it has done has definitely been interesting. But yeah, it's going really well so far.
Yeah, so that leads into like my next question is like, what have you thought so far of the season?
It's definitely going to be one to remember, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
But no, it's been really interesting watching how everybody has had to adapt to strange circumstances, strange lockdown protocols, the bubbles that they're having to operate within, or not if you're Bottas or Leclerc. But they were with them. Well, Charles wasn't within his bubble, which was a bit naughty, slap on the wrist, but that's by the by. But yeah, I think in terms of the racing that we've had, what a season opener. I don't know if I've ever seen a season opener like that. But it's been really, really interesting to see how things are playing out, and how the teams are adapting, and the different challenges they've all been facing. I think we've had a really good first three races. They've all been different races as well, which I've really enjoyed. I don't know about you girls, but I've really enjoyed the different ways that the races have had to play out. So that's always been a really nice thing to see as well.
Yeah, like we've had everything really. We've had bloody like only 11 cars finishing, then we've had rain, then we had, and like people are saying, oh, Hungarian Grand Prix was so boring, but it's only so boring because of what we've had before.
Exactly, yeah. Like in relation, I feel a bit bad for Hungary, because I think if we'd have had boring races before, Hungary actually would have played out really well. But yeah, we were a bit spoilt in Austria, so yeah.
It's quite interesting because in the run-up, everyone's saying, oh, at a repeat track, we'll have to do something like reverse grids for it to be interesting. Mother Nature just provided the drama for us.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing, doesn't she? And I guess that's it was a worry. I was really interested to see how back-to-back race would work, because it's obviously never anything we've had in Formula One before. We've had it in Formula E, where they have a double header weekend, so we have seen racing like it before, and obviously in those races you don't always get the same results. So I did think we would get something different, but whether it was going to be that different, I don't think any of us thought it was going to be that different. But yeah, really, really good to see. So we've got another double header at Silverstone to come up. So we'll have to see if that's the same in terms of it being different for each races. But I think that's probably what we're going to see.
Definitely. And I think it's been quite interesting, because for a lot of people, this will either be the first. Many people have come into the sport now, or many have come from watching Drive to Survive. So I wanted to know, how did you first get into motorsport?
So I am from a village that you might have heard of on F1 coverage called Brixworth, which is in Northamptonshire, and it's where they make the Mercedes high performance powertrains. So pretty much everybody in my village worked at the factory, so it was always something that was around me, just growing up. And at the end of each season, obviously the Formula One drivers would come to visit the village. So when I was properly into it, that was really exciting, because you kind of get one time in the year where these famous people came to the village, which was quite interesting. But other than kind of growing up around it, it was my older brother loved it. And so as soon as I could sit in a rocker and watch TV, every race we would sit and watch the race together. So it was definitely a family thing. My family's massively into cars and racing in general, so I was either going to absolutely love it or hate it, and luckily for me it was the former. So yeah, it was kind of a family affair, but also being surrounded by it just growing up.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like, I live nowhere near race. I could get to Brands Hatch if I wanted to, but I live like nowhere near racing. And like, I literally, apart from like the girls and like the group chat that we have now from Twitter, one girl from uni, my flatmate, she's the only person that I know who likes it. So like, I think like trying to get into motorsport was very much my family, and that was it. So yeah, so I know what you're talking about with your family watching it.
I think that's the thing about motorsport as well, isn't it? It's not something. There's way more stuff out there now, like, so way more content creators. Obviously, the Drive to Survive series was brilliant marketing for Formula One. But yeah, kind of when we were probably getting into it, it's either your family or you somehow discover it. But it was really hard. Like back when I was first getting into motorsport, there wasn't anything. So if I hadn't had my family, I don't know how, if I would have ever have got into motorsport, which is quite a sad thought, really. But what about you, Hannah? How did you get into it?
I've basically been brought up on motorsport my whole life, so it's quite an irony. I share my birthday with Michael Schumacher, and everyone.
Oh wow!
It's ingrained since birth, so it's something my parents both watched. They took me to see the British Grand Prix back in 2016. But I think the massively important thing for me was that it was on free-to-air TV. It was on BBC and on Channel 4 and on ITV throughout my whole childhood, and that meant it was easy access. Whereas now, for a lot of fans have come in and they've realised it's behind the paywall, it kind of creates an elitism barrier that wasn't there for many of us growing up.
Yes, it's so right. It kind of, that was one of the main reasons why we were doing what we were doing at WTF1 was to make sure that it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, if you have any interest in motorsport, even just like you just like cars or you just like engineering or anything, that you had something that was there 24 hours a day to entertain you and to bring you information and to bring motorsport into your life. Like that was everything that we circulated around. Like that was our ethos. So you're right, and I think it is a shame that it's not on free to view TV anymore, but I guess that was a nice parting gift from Mr. Eccleston before he scooted off, so thanks, Bernie.
Yeah. And so like spoke about the barriers now for like, I know I can only watch when I'm at uni because I have Sky Go because my mum and my dad pay for it. But did you face any other barriers when you was either getting into like your job or just liking motorsport in general?
No, not really. I think I'm kind of one of those people where if I want something, I go get it. So I'm very like self-driven, which is, you know, I count myself very lucky that I can do that. But no, I don't think there's ever really been any barriers. I've been lucky in that I've found myself in the right place at the right time a lot of the time. And when I've seen an opportunity, I've basically just grabbed it with both hands. I pretty much wore my boss down at Car Throttle to move over to WTF1 because I wasn't working on WTF1 when the company first acquired it. But because I loved it so much and I love motorsport, I was like, I need to work on this brand. So you need to put me over there right now, create a job. I don't care what it is, just create it. I'll lead it. And so he eventually, like after persuasion, and it made business sense in the end. But yeah, it was very much me going, please, I need to go over there and talk about motorsport on the daily. Thanks. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any barriers or anything that I've come up against.
You spoke about how your move over to WTF1. I wanted to find out, obviously, you've done so much. What's been your most difficult moment of your career and what's been your proudest moment?
I've had a couple of difficult moments, definitely. Probably one of the most difficult was actually when I was asking my boss to move over. He didn't believe it was a full-time job, and so he kind of put me on probation. So I was head of sales at Car Throttle at the time, and I'd always known I didn't want to be a salesperson my whole life. It wasn't something that I particularly enjoyed. I was decent at it, but I didn't want to do it forever. And I had like my performance was slipping. You could see like my passion just wasn't in it. And my performance was slipping and we weren't doing hugely well on the money front, or I wasn't at least. And so that's when I was like, look, I want to move over to WTF1. This brand has got a future. I think it could make a ton of money, but also it's really important to the motorsport community. And I genuinely think it's going to transform the way motorsport media works. And I want to be a part of that. And he was like, well, you've got a month, make it work. And so I had 4 weeks with set KPIs where I had to prove the brand could make money. So I had to bring money in, and bearing in mind that when WTF1 joined us, it hadn't made any money. It hadn't done any brand deals. It hadn't got customers. It had got a bit of e-com money, a bit of platform like website money. But in terms of like working with brands, it had never done anything. It didn't have any partnerships. It had nothing. And I had a month to make it work. And luckily enough, I got it to work. But that month was probably one of the worst months of my life because it only all came together in the final hour. And there were, I was having regular one-to-ones with my boss, and he was like, Jess, if you don't do this, I'm not putting you back in sales on Car Throttle. You will be out of the company. You won't have a job. And I spent so many sleepless nights. I gave up. I started applying for jobs elsewhere because I just didn't think. I was like, I'm trying so hard, but none of this is falling into place. And in the final hour, all of my hard work paid off, and I hit the bare minimum of what my boss said needed to happen. And I became head of partnerships at WTF1. And after that, we had an amazing year. We worked with so many different brands. We got invited to our first Grand Prix as media. It all snowballed from there. But that month where I didn't feel like any of it was going to work, my word. And it was my dream. Like, I was trying to chase my dream, and I was like, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't do this. And so, yeah, that was so tough to be able to get through. But I was, I just believed in it so much that I got it to work eventually. So yeah, that's probably one of the worst points ever. But it ended up with a happy story. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's so nice. So it's kind of gone from your worst moment to like one of your proudest without even.
Yeah, 100%. And then, yeah, I guess in terms of proudest moments, the first Grand Prix that WTF won ever did from start to finish was Baku 2018, and we were hired to, yeah, I know, what a one to do, like, for a weekend. But we were out there covering all of their social media content. So all of the circuit's social media content was produced by us. And we'd never worked a full race weekend, but we knew how it works. Like, obviously we knew the setup, and we thought we were making killer content. So we were like, we can do all this, no problem. But I think, yeah, the fact that we managed to cover it in the way we did, with, I think we had a crew of 7 people covering an entire race weekend, and we'd never done it before, and we absolutely nailed it. I think that was like, I was like, we're here now. This is it. Like, we're at the table. We can do this. That's got to be up there as one of my proudest moments working with the guys. Yeah, they were good memories.
You can definitely say it's well done, Baku.
Yeah. Do you know what? We said that all the time. Well done, Baku.
So like, kind of moving on, like, because obviously me and Hannah are both girls, and we have, don't know if you've seen it, but we have this series called the F series with 3 other girls that are content creators. So we was just going to ask you, like, do you think it's important for more females to be involved in motorsports, either content wise or fans?
Yeah, I mean, goes without saying, really. I think the thing I've always championed is that anyone who's anyone should feel like they can be a part of this community, whether you're female, male, wherever you are in the world, that you should feel like you can be a part and that you belong in the community. So anything that helps that, I'm a massive fan of, an advocate for. I try not to, and this might be slightly controversial, depends on how you feel about it. I don't label myself as a woman in motorsport. I label myself as Jess in motorsport that happens to be female. And that's how I've always really approached things, which I think is why, another reason maybe why I say that I've not faced barriers. Now, I'm only speaking of my own experience, obviously, and I can only speak to that. So just because I've had it a certain way doesn't mean that another person hasn't had barriers, or people block them from doing what they want to do because they happen to be a woman or the color of their skin or whatever. So, but I think because I've carried myself that way, and I've been really confident in the fact that I deserve a seat at that table because I know what I'm talking about, I'm really passionate, and I'm good at my job, then that to me has been really empowering. But I guess what we were saying before we started the show, if by having more women visible, being content creators or presenters, or working in roles that you don't normally see women working in, if that helps other girls go, I can do that, then 100% there should be way more women doing what we do.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you're inspired by people around you that you could see yourself reflected in.
Yeah.
So from my personal experience, it was seeing people like Lee McKenzie and Susie Perry covering the F1 content, yourself, and seeing someone who was very much like me, and actually seeing that there are, even though there are certain limits in the world as a whole, sometimes you have to just be willing to give it a shot and push through them.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to feel like you would be welcome in a community where you don't see yourself. you have to be a really strong kind of person to have that not affect you. And as much as I think that that society needs to change, or communities need to change, or the motorsport industry needs to change, I think it's also about finding ways to empower people to feel like they deserve to be there, regardless of who they can see. I think you're absolutely right, Hannah. Like that is really important, to be able to see that you are welcome. But also we should be teaching maybe the girls that haven't seen us or can't see us or didn't know we exist or whatever, that they are just as welcome, and they should feel empowered to be able to chase what they want as well. So I think it's like a two-way conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to pick up on the point that you made, like you don't see yourself as, I'm a female motorsport. I want people to look at our channel and think, I really like this channel because of our content, not because we're girls. And I think that's so important, because obviously it is a very male-dominated sport, and to have that little niche of girls and women in it is really important. But then also, I don't want to just get the clicks or the likes because I am female. I want it to be because I work hard and because it's what I produce is good.
And I think there's going to be it might not happen straight away, but there will be a shift away, because as you said, it is still a novelty to see female presenters or female motorsport content creators. And it's almost like you can use that to your advantage, because people will be like, oh, what's this? This is different. This is new. But at the same time, you're right. You don't want it to be tokenist. You don't want it to be like, it's only because I'm a woman that people are watching. It should be, as you said, it should be, you just so happen to be a woman and your content's banging. So, it's, but it's hard. And I think there'll be people out there that will not even listen to what you're saying. I did a video on the Autosport channel the other day, and I was providing a voiceover for a video, and there were so many comments on that video. They were like, can we get someone more knowledgeable to VO this video, please? And I always replied, like, from the Autosport account, I always reply to them, and I'm not rude. I just go, can I ask why? Or what do you mean by more knowledgeable? And it's amazing how, first off, people tend to change their mind when they realize that you're reading their comments, which is always a weird one, because it's like, we don't read the comments. Cool. But also that in that particular instance as well, the VO that I provided was partially written by one of our expert journalists. So I was like, this information is like the most knowledgeable information that I could be giving you. And you're saying that it's not. So that was automatically just prejudice about the fact that it was a female voice they were hearing, not a male voice. So, but I challenge that all the time. I'm always like, what do you mean by that? Or should you be judging people based on their gender? Are you listening to the content? Did you even watch the video? That kind of thing. So it doesn't always work. Sometimes it backfires. But I think a lot of the time, if you enter into a dialogue with people, a lot of the time they U-turn and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really sorry, and it's just a joke or something, which always, like, that riles me up the wrong way when people are going, yeah, it's a joke, get over it. But that's just what we're gonna get, I think, until it starts to become normal. That's just what we're gonna get.
I really like the idea of kind of going out and challenging those kind of comments that come out, especially, for example, we've seen with Lewis Hamilton publicly criticising F1, the FIA, for not doing enough to tackle racism in the sport. I think it kind of leads on to one of the questions is, obviously, Formula One have set up the We Race as one initiative and other initiatives to kind of bring more women into the sport. But do you think they go far enough to bring diversity into motorsport?
I think this is the biggest move we've ever seen any industries make. I think it's been a global collective that we probably, it's pushed people to have to show that they are outwardly trying to improve, but the proof will be in the action. So I said, a lot of people were criticizing F1 for having not coming out sooner. Obviously, like Lewis was very vocal in people not stating their stance. And whilst I do agree with Lewis's comments and that it was important that people were addressing it, I'm more interested in the actions. I'm more interested in like, what are you actually doing to make sure that this isn't a problem moving forward? And that's going to take some time to see. So, are they doing enough right now? I mean, the ceremony in Hungary, like the pre-ceremony, you had one job, like organize the drivers, get them there on time. I mean, F1 blows my mind in how to clockwork it works. But mid to the second they are on time, and it's all to do with timing, and yet they couldn't get everybody at the front of the grid to stand together. I mean, I think that, what was it? It was Giovinazzi just waltzes in like part way through, and you're like, well, what? How is this we racers won? Like you can't even get organised into a group. Like, so I think as the fear is that it's words and nice rainbows and logos and all of that, but and that's why I have to applaud actually the Sky coverage, because they've not let that drop. They're having conversations about it every single weekend, which I know they're coming under a lot of criticism for, but that's the whole point. The whole point is that you can't just slap a rainbow on a car and say end racism. Like, that's not how it works. Yeah. You've got to be looking at why has it been this way in the first place? And it will take some time. So I don't want to judge right now, but we should, and I mean we as the collective, we as the people at home, the fans, the media, the drivers, everybody that's involved in Formula One should be holding Formula One to account and say, if this is what you're promising, we want step-by-step guides. We want to see what you're doing. Chase donated $1 million, which was amazing. But where's that money going? Show me people that you're bringing into the sport. And as much as it was amazing to see Stephanie on the podium, and her being the first Black woman ever to stand on the podium, that's great, but also please don't let that just become like, well, we've done it now.
Yeah,
she was the first Black woman on the podium, like, cool, 2020 tick. Do you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be like that. So I'm gonna hold judgment. And what are your guys' thoughts on it?
Well, I actually wrote a blog post after Austria because I do sociology, so I'm quite like not knowledgeable, but I learn about this quite a lot, and I'm quite passionate because I have quite a lot of multicultural like friends, and where I live is very multicultural, and I'm always trying to teach people if they're not as knowledgeable as they want to be. So like when it all happened, like I didn't just post the black square, I put educational resources, all that sort of stuff, and like when we saw Hungary and I saw like the drivers not kneeling, or for whatever reason they wasn't kneeling, I was like, but this isn't showing racing as one, because we're still so divided. Not like they, I'm not saying they're racist or they don't agree with it, but it still looks like we're divided. And then after Hungary, I was just like, there's no, if F1 want to do this properly, they've got to set out actual, you be here now, you do it for this, and then you like move on. And that's why I think it was Ted after the race, and he did a whole segment about it. And I think that's so important that they, like you said, they are talking about it every race. And I think that exposure and that criticism will help improve in the future. So we can't judge right now, it's been 3 races, but like in the future, if we all talk about it, then it will just improve naturally, hopefully.
I think definitely especially the criticism that Sky F1 received is very much a symptom of the fact that discrimination very much does still exist in motorsport. The fact that people are criticising them for speaking out on it. It shouldn't be something you have to criticise someone for. It should be natural that we as human beings do speak up against these issues. And I've especially liked Mercedes' approach to kind of tackling discrimination. The fact that very much for decades it was Formula One drivers don't get involved in politics, keep your opinions to yourself. And very much Lewis has very much come into his own, been very much the advocate and kind of I would say the voice of reason amongst the paddock. And Mercedes have actually stood by their driver and said, we are going to back him. We recognise that we need to do more. I think the We Racers One initiative is a good initiative. However, I think that they very much go, we'll start at Formula One and everything will trickle down. And I think that's often where the limits of success lie, in that's why I compare it to the Dare to Be Different programme that Susie Wolf started. Very much that's starting with young girls in school. And I think that has far more success because you're very much getting them into an early age before many of the prejudices that they'll see later in life come into force, but also allowing them and encouraging them to aspire to careers in motorsport and very much broadening their horizons and confidence. Whereas the We Racers One initiative, which I think doesn't recognise that they need to do more work from the ground up. You need to get more girls into STEM subjects. You need to get more people from working class backgrounds into motorsport because oftentimes it's very privileged. It'll be interesting to see how the initiative goes, but I think they've made some progress, and I like the fact that they're definitely recognising more now that they should have done more stuff sooner. But I think especially with the shambles that have happened with taking the knee at the moment and kind of just the taking the initiative of Giovinazzi not even having his end racism shirt on when he arrived there, is little things like that will be what people remember, not the initiative. And I think they need to have the news and the rhetoric and be like, actually, even if they all don't take the knee, we're all going to collectively do something. And I also think that's where Sebastian, Roman Grosjean and Alexander Wirtz and the GDPA need to be like, actually, we all need to do more to tackle this.
Yeah, it was actually quite sad to hear that it's not something that they talk about in the GDPA.
Yeah.
Which is just a bit like, it's just a bit, I mean, it was also sad to hear that, and I do semi-understand where this opinion comes from. Don't necessarily agree with it, but the fact that Grosjean said, well, we've done it once, so we don't need to do it again. And it's like, well, again, you're kind of missing the point. If we're going to say We Racers One every single race, then we also need to show that we're racing as one every single race. So yeah, there needs to be, as you've both pointed out, there just needs to be a bit more of a connection, a bringing together, and a real show of we are as one and we are standing together as part of this. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens in Silverstone, because it's also the 70 years of Formula One coming up as well. It's coming up. So we do need to get on board with that as well.
Yeah, and I think like the more we like I said, the more people is like talking about it, and the more coverage it gets, it will change. So, and another thing on changes, like we just wanted to say, like with changes to like driver lineups and like the budget cap and technical regulations in 2022, and obviously the lasting impacts of Corona, because it's really changed everything. What do you see for the future of Formula One?
So I'm one of the optimists that I think that 2022 is going to be a really poignant year for Formula One, and I think that's going to be the start of the future of Formula One. It's probably the most dramatic rule change we've had since we've moved into the hybrid era. On paper, it sounds great. But as with all of these things, we won't really know its effect until we see it in full force. But it's moving in the right direction. You know, Formula One is too expensive for most teams. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the whole racing point, tracing point thing, and teams getting upset that they've copied Mercedes, but actually, you know, is it a smart investment because it means that they can move their development and their money into other areas? So is it cost saving? You know, it's so there's a lot of things that are going on, and so I'm really optimistic about 2022. I think next year might be a bit of a pain year because it is essentially going to be a copy of this year. but as we've seen, we've still got enough. Like, it looks like we've got enough to talk about this year. So I'm not too disappointed. So, but yeah, 2022, I'm like, yes, bring it on. I'm really, really looking forward to the new regs.
Well, definitely. I think it'll definitely prove and see which teams have invested more in the future than the present. I think looking at, say, for example, Racing Point, the fact that they'll be switching over to becoming Aston Martin, and then their investments going forward, the developments of McLaren once they get the Mercedes engine, and seeing how that kind of shakes up the dynamic, because normally with a regulation change, the top teams one of them tends to slip off more. So I think that'll be good. I think definitely end on a kind of a positive note. If you could give any advice to females aspiring getting into motorsport, what would it be?
I think it links back to kind of what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is like, as much as the industry needs to change to accommodate us and be more welcoming of us, believe in your own power, believe in your own ability, and don't let comments or criticism hold you back from what you really, really want to do. And I know that's really difficult, but chasing your passion and using your skills and proving your skills is so, so important. And I don't know if a lot of or enough girls hear that. They feel like, I'm going to get criticized, I'm going to have bad comments, I'm going to have people tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. And in my experience, I've used that. If people underestimate me, I love it, because it means that I'm going to blow them away. And I've got a massive competitive streak in me anyway. But I think that has got me to where I am, that belief in myself. So I think that would be, stop labeling yourself as a woman in motorsport, I would say is the biggest thing. I love the fact that I'm a woman. I love being female. I like girly things as much as I like what is typically labeled as male interest subjects, but I don't label myself, because I just think labeling yourself hinders your strength, and makes you other when you're not. You're just as good as them, if not better. So that's probably my two strongest bits of advice: believe in yourself and stop labeling yourself and limiting yourself.
I always remember it was a quote that my mum, I don't know where she got it from growing up, but it's the whole thing of, just remember, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but she did it backwards and in high heels.
That's brilliant. I like that. I'm going to take that. Well done, your mum.
I don't know where she got it from. I'll have to give quote credits down below. But thank you so much for coming on, Jess. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. So.
Likewise, and I'm so thrilled that you are doing this, and I hope that you get all the support you need. You've definitely got mine, so I hope it's just onwards and upwards, and that you get to do some brilliant things on the channel.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll both be blushing now. Yeah. So if you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe and comment, and we'll see you soon. So, au revoir.
Bye.
Bye.